Thank you. Well, welcome back, everyone. I've got a few more minutes to talk a little bit about Walt Disney, Disneyland, and Walt Disney World, and then I've got a full hour after dinner tonight. So in our time this afternoon, I want to flesh out a little bit what I visited on this morning, and that is the Lost Weekend with Walt and Herb Ryman. And by the way, Herb did such a great job doing the original drawing of Disneyland that Walt actually hired him permanently to work at the studio and on Disneyland. How many of you have been to Disneyland in California? Raise your hand. Do you remember Sleeping Beauty Castle? Well, Herb Ryman would go on to design Sleeping Beauty Castle. So he gets a call on a Saturday morning, works through the weekend, does the original drawing for Disneyland, and then goes on to design Sleeping Beauty Castle. So I think he did a pretty good job on the so-called Lost Weekend. Well, our other lessons from this morning were the importance of partnerships and the importance of technology. How many of you, even though you're in the agricultural farming business, which is like one of the original industries from the start of human civilization, how many of you use technology every single day and to some degree feel overwhelmed by technology as we keep moving forward faster and faster into the future? Raise your hand. Exactly. Walt was an interesting individual because he had one foot in the past, i.e. Main Street, USA, and Marceline, Missouri, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, but then one foot into the future, i.e. Tomorrowland. How do you define technology? You hear how quiet the room got? I asked you, how many of you use technology every single day? Hands went up. How many of you feel like we're going too fast into the future? And everyone was like, oh gosh, yeah. And now all of a sudden I'm asking you to define technology. Crickets. Here's how you can define technology, my friends. Technology is anything invented or created after you were born. So for example, I went to college 40 years ago. Started in the fall of 1982. The latest, greatest technology was the VCR. And we knew who the rich kid was. A fellow by the name of Owen McMillan. Doesn't he sound like the rich kid? A fellow by the name of Owen McMillan, because he had a VCR in his college dorm room. Anybody moved their kids into their dorm room this past fall with a VCR? Exactly. Technology, anything invented or created after you were born. And it's never going to stop. Again, change is the one constant in the universe, and Walt was always adapting. Walt was always embracing change. He never wanted to do a sequel. Think about that for just a moment. He never wanted to do a sequel. Back when he was only developing short cartoons, he came up with a very popular cartoon on the Three Little Pigs. The nation loved it. And as a result, they wanted more what? More pigs. And Walt's response was, you can't top pigs with pigs. And so he doesn't stay a cartoonist for very long. He then wants to become a full-length movie maker. And so we go from Mickey Mouse to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And then after the success of the full-length animated feature films, whether it's Snow White, whether it's Dumbo, whether it's Pinocchio, he then wants to become an amusement park operator. And at the end of his day, he doesn't even want to become an amusement park operator. He then wants to become an urban planner. My challenge to you is to recognize change is inevitable. You have to grow. You have to evolve. You have to embrace technology, or otherwise you're going to get left behind. I don't want to see that happen. Cap doesn't want to see that happen. I don't think you want to see that happen either. And yet at the same time, you can still honor your history and honor your traditions. So, for example, Walt Disney was born in Chicago, Illinois, December 5th, 1901. His family then moved to Marceline, Missouri, a farm outside of town, when he was 4 years old, and they stayed there for 5 years. Now, Walt had a difficult relationship with his father. Anybody have a difficult relationship with their parents? Again, you're more like Walt Disney than you realize today. Difficult relationship with his father. The farm ultimately fails. They moved to Kansas City. Walt's only good memories from his impoverished childhood were his memories from that farm in Marceline. And those memories meant so much to him that when he was building and designing Disneyland with a single entrance in and a single exit out, which no amusement park operator in the world thought was a good idea at all, when he was designing and building Disneyland with a single entrance in and a single exit out, which we know of today as Main Street USA, he built Main Street USA modeled after his memories from Marceline, Missouri. So again, 1 foot in the past, 1 foot forward into the future. You have a great history, and you have a great tradition here in Canada with who you are and what you do. But you also have to recognize it's not the 19th century. It's not even the 20th century. We're already into the 21st century. It's not that change is coming. Change is already here. And you've got to be willing to embrace it. You've got to encourage it. You've got to recognize it if you are, in fact, going to be successful. How many of you have been to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida? See, you are my people. Walt Disney World was never about doing another Disneyland. Now, you might have gone to Magic Kingdom, which is very much like a Disneyland 2.0, but again, Walt hated sequels. He never wanted to repeat himself. You, quote unquote, can't top pigs with pigs. And so they only built Magic Kingdom or Disneyland 2.0 so that he could build what he really wanted to build, which was Epcot. And Epcot, not the theme park that Disney built in 1982, but the Epcot that Walt dreamed of, the Epcot that Walt envisioned before he died in December of 1966, which was a true city, the first city of the 21st century that was going to be a place where we lived and worked and played together. But again, Walt died 6 months before they ever broke ground in Florida. They opened Magic Kingdom first, which was going to generate the revenue necessary for Epcot. And then when it came time to do Epcot, they're like, well, Walt's not here. We have no idea how to build a city. We have no idea how to run a city. We can do theme parks. And so they ended up building Epcot as another theme park because, well, that's what Disney knew how to do as a company. If you've gone to Epcot, hopefully you at least went to a pavilion called Living with the Land. Because the Imagineers will tell you that is the pavilion that is most like what Walt envisioned when he dreamed of Epcot back in the 1960s. And it's a little boat ride. It's a little boat ride sponsored by Chiquita, which talks about living with the land, sustaining ourselves off of the land. It's the story of agriculture. Because Walt recognized the importance of farming going back to his days in Missouri when he was a farm boy from ages 4 to 9. Now, interestingly enough, Disney today is still trying to move Epcot forward into the future. There's a part of that park that's really sort of a Tomorrowland on steroids, if you will. They just opened a brand new roller coaster based on Guardians of the Galaxy. We have any Marvel fans here with us this afternoon? They just built a brand new roller coaster that cost $500 million. What could you do with $500 million today? Probably not get a roller coaster, right? That'd buy a really nice tractor. Probably not a roller coaster. A $500 million roller coaster called Cosmic Rewind, but that's not what Walt envisioned for Epcot. Walt wanted the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, and it began with the Living with the Land Pavilion, recognizing that we got to eat, recognizing that we plant the seeds of tomorrow by remembering our stories and our histories from the past. I look forward to being with you tonight, sharing a little bit more of Walt's story and how you can change your story by being the hero in everything that you do. Have a great afternoon.